Mixing is an essential process of music production, and you might already be doing it without even realizing. What's up, geniuses? My name is Adriel Rivera, and welcome back to the channel where you learn to show your genius. This song, just like the rest of my songs, was mixed by me, and one of the most common things you might hear audio engineers talk about is the mixing of a song. They might say, oh, this is a good mix, or the mix sounds muddy on this one, but what exactly are they talking about when they refer to a mix? Does this mean that you need to mix your music, and how do you even get started in mixing? First, what is mixing? All it is the process of blending multiple elements in your song to get your desired balance. Let's say your song is a cake. To make the perfect cake, we need to have a good balance of each ingredient. So if your drums are the flour, your guitar is the eggs, and your vocals are the milk, how much of each ingredient you put into your song will affect the outcome of your cake. Every song has a story, and when we mix, we want to do it with the intent to tell that story better. For example, you might add a lot of echo to someone's vocals to make them sound more isolated or alone. Or you might make the bass louder to add more intensity if the song is angrier in tone. Whatever the case, mixing helps take the listener on that journey. Mixing takes some time to get right, and listening back to my old songs, I can definitely hear where I went wrong and what I would do better. The thing is, there wasn't any magic tip or technique that I learned that got me better at mixing. I just improved with practice. The reality is that, like any skill, getting good at mixing just takes time. Soon you'll start to develop an ear for what it is that you like and don't like when it comes to mixing, but you can't get there without practice. Speaking of what you do and don't like, mixing is subjective. Sure, there are some things that people will generally agree sound better than others, but for the most part, what sounds good is totally based on opinion. Now that we got that out of the way, how do you actually start mixing in FL Studio? Before we get into that, I want to talk about something real quick. Getting your music onto Spotify and Apple Music. You might be thinking, whoa, Adriel, I'm learning how to mix right now. I'm not ready to put my music up there. And to you, I say, maybe. But with the amount of successful independent musicians rising in numbers, it might be something to consider even at the early stages of your music career. I started releasing music on Spotify with DistroKid back in 2017, and I'm glad I did earlier than later. As my Spotify has started to grow in popularity, a lot of my older songs have started to pick up a bit of play as well, and because I use DistroKid and keep 100% of my earnings, I've been able to make a few good extra dollars from my old music. It's nowhere near the quality of the stuff I release today, but it's still cool to know that even if you don't have the highest quality songs just yet, there's still people out there that will listen. So if you want to start releasing music on major streaming platforms like Spotify and Apple Music for just as little as $20 a year, feel free to click the link in the description for 7% off your first year of DistroKid. Thank you, DistroKid, for sponsoring this video. You might already be mixing without even realizing it. Like I mentioned earlier, all mixing is blending the elements of your song to get your desired balance. So even if you've just been adjusting the volume of the instruments in your song because they were too loud or quiet, congratulations, you've been mixing this whole entire time. But let's make sure you're set up properly for mixing in FL Studio. First, open the channel rack and route each individual instrument and audio track to its own mixer channel by adjusting the number on the left side next to it. Now, when you open up the mixer and click play, you'll notice that each instrument and audio track is on its own channel. Feel free to rename the mixer channels to the corresponding instruments and audio. If it's the first time you're looking at the mixer and feel intimidated, don't worry, it's really simple once you break it down. First, let's focus on one channel. A channel will consist of a few knobs, but the main one you'll be using 99% of the time is the fader knob. All this does is adjust the volume of your instrument. Above it, you'll see a peak meter that shows the volume of your instrument. The rest of the channels on the mixer work the exact same way, so once you know how to use one of them, you know how to use all of them. On the right side, we have the effects rack, where we can add effects to our instruments like reverb, delay, EQ, or whatever it is that we might need to get our mix sounding the way we want. Whatever the effects we add here will only be added to the mixer channel we have selected. So if you select mixer channel number 2, you'll notice that it's completely empty until we add something to it. If we go back to mixer channel 1, everything we added is still there. Let's give you a quick example of mixing. Here I have a piano and drums with each individual percussive element added to its own mixer track. Since this sounds like it would be a sad song, I want to reduce some of the energy in the drums. So I'm going to lower the volume or level of the snare. To add to the sadness, I'm going to put some reverb on the piano to make it sound like it's isolated in a big hall or a cathedral. Now we're telling more of a story through our mix. This is all mixing is, and whether or not what I just made sounds good is completely up to you. The beauty of mixing is that you get to decide how you want it to sound. However, there are a few best practices that can help you get to a point where professionals would give you a pat on the back. First, mix with intent. There must always be a purpose behind everything you do. If you add EQ to an instrument, I want you to be able to explain to me why you did what you just did. The moment you start adding effects without understanding what that effect does in the first place is the moment your story starts to fall apart. Taking people on a journey with your mix revolves around your ability to understand what your story is and how you're trying to tell it. Second, don't overdo it. If you want to add reverb to an instrument to better tell your story, don't add so much that your listener is drowning in it. If you want to boost the bass in a song for more intensity, don't push it so much that's the only thing you hear. Mixing should be done in a way that balances everything together. If you're just starting off with FL Studio and you want to know how to get started with making music, feel free to check out this beginner's guide to FL Studio. Thank you so much for watching and show your genius.